What's inside the box? We'll get to that. A little over a year ago, on October 9th, 2020, I uploaded this video. In it, I posited that Wilbur Soot was poised to leave the Dream SMP following the completion of its next major arc, which, at the time, was the October 16th Festival of Manberg to celebrate Schlatt's rise to power. My evidence for said theory was essentially non-existent. The whole argument basically hinged on Wilbur's e-boy love songs Internet Ruined Me and In Love with an E-Girl. Now, granted, there are a lot of extremely hyperbolic elements in both of these songs, and the character from whose point of view the songs were written was obviously intended to be toxic. But even though these songs were, on the surface, about a delusional and obsessed terminally online beta boy, I still believe that there was an undercurrent of truth to their lyrics. That deep down, Wilbur did regret the overwhelming responsibility that came with being a content creator, and that he was using the veneer of comedy to voice those very real feelings. Like I said, the evidence for this theory was admittedly weak at best and totally non-existent at worst. It wasn't substantiated in anything empirical, but rather something unempirical and illusory. I just had this gut feeling that Wilbur was going to leave the Dream SMP, and that was all there was to it. At the time, I barely had any subscribers to my name, so to me, the risk was entirely worth it. It was a shot in the dark, but if I was right, this video could single-handedly kickstart my entire career. That was only if I was right, though. On the night of October the 8th, approximately 1 week before the Red Festival, I wrote the script for the video in 2 hours flat, recorded it using only the voice memos app on my phone, cobbled together a 480p monstrosity on the outdated family computer sitting downstairs in the study, and went up to bed sleep-deprived at 4 in the morning. On October 16th, 2020, Wilbur Soot did not, in fact, leave the Dream SMP. But 1 month later, on the night of November 16th, 2020, his character was finally killed off, allowing him to go on a brief hiatus with only an occasional cameo here and there as the disembodied spirit of Ghostbur. That's not really important, though. What is important is that on the night of October 16th, just before he finished his stream for the day, Wilbur happened to mention in passing that he was indeed planning on leaving the server that night, but for some unknown reason, he had changed his mind and chosen to stick around anyways.
I thought today was going to be my last time here, honestly. I was considering blowing up L'Manberg, having a big moment where I'm like looking over the rubble and I'm like, I've changed as a person. But like after this, I am just deeper. I want to do different, more blown up things, you know?
Oh, you're speaking my language.
Which, to me, raises a single chilling question. Did he know? Did Wilbur see my video and then choose to stay on as head writer for the Dream SMP for another month out of nothing but pure spite for some random child on the internet? Statistics says no, overwhelmingly. It's almost infinitely more likely that Wilbur chose not to leave the Dream SMP that night because he realized he could write a much more emotionally impactful finale for his character once Philza Minecraft voiced his willingness to play the role of Wilbur's father. But there's this teeny tiny little part of me that still wants to believe that I had something to do with it. That for a brief, fleeting second, Wilbur knew who I was and he knew that I was right. I'm just being egotistical though. But then again, I'm a YouTuber, so what else is new? The video I uploaded in the wee small hours of October 9th, Wilbur Soot is leaving the Dream SMP, got the most views out of any video on my channel at that time, but it failed to launch my career into the stratosphere like I had been hoping it would. Oh well. At least I got to meet Animagician as a result of that video, so it wasn't a total loss. It's been well over a year since then, and a lot has happened. You'd never really expect to be where you ended up, right? But now that I'm back and making videos on YouTube again, I thought it'd be fitting to go back to where it all started for me, with a sequel to the video that, in a very real sense, started this channel and made it what it was today. So, without further ado, this is a brief history of Wilbur Soot on the Dream SMP. Wilbur Soot, the character, born to Philza Minecraft and a Samsung refrigerator, joined the Dream SMP at just the wrong time. His wife, a sentient and only possibly shape-shifting fish, was with child, and he was a stranger in a strange land, trying to make his way in a foreign world that seemed hell-bent on destroying everything he held dear. Wilbur Soot, the content creator, on the other hand, joined the Dream SMP at just the right time. He was the first substantial addition to the server post-Tommy Innit, and immediately he started shaking things up. This might be something of an unpopular opinion, but I don't think that Wilbur Soot is the most original writer, at least not in the early days of the Dream SMP. Don't get me wrong, he's a damn good one. The character arc he wrote for himself in the Dream SMP is a thing of absolute beauty, and by the time this video is over, you'll see why. But at the beginning of the Dream SMP, before there was even a script, Wilbur doesn't exactly deliver big on conceptual originality, at least not right away. He started out his time on the server with an homage to Breaking Bad, but that didn't exactly go so well, because most of the middle schoolers watching the Dream SMP hadn't seen Breaking Bad yet, so he started LARPing Hamilton with Tommy Innit instead. And that did go pretty well, because most of the middle schoolers watching the Dream SMP liked Hamilton, so he just kept doing it. And it's here, during the dawn of what would become the L'Manberg era, that Wilbur's three greatest strengths as a writer finally start to shine. He is exceptionally good at changing narrative direction at a breakneck pace, he writes remarkably consistent characters, and most importantly of all, he knows how to give the audience exactly what they want. And in an age dominated by genre-defying crossover events that exist and subsist solely on the basis of fan service, Wilbur's talent for writing fan service for the Dream SMP was perhaps his most valuable asset. He and Tommy Innit started a wholesome revolution on the server. They made flags and cute little uniforms and a national anthem that totally wasn't just Hallelujah with different lyrics. People liked that, so they kept doing it. Fundy joined them too, and because he was a fox, and therefore cute, Wilbur started calling him his son. People liked that too, so it became canon. But within the narrative, the story of Fundy's birth was much less wholesome 100. Wilbur's wife died shortly after giving birth to their child, leaving her husband, a single father, trying to raise a son in a world that was not his home. Grief consumed him, and the only thing Wilbur had left of Sally was the nation he had built in her honor, L'Manberg, their forever unfinished symphony, forever incomplete without her, a lullaby that they had dedicated to their son. Dream didn't like that, though, which makes sense within the confines of the narrative, because their whole revolution was technically born out of a meth-cooking operation inside of a recreational vehicle. Ironically, even though the original Breaking Bad homage with the drug van was quickly abandoned within the Dream SMP narrative, Wilbur's retroactive canonization of Sally only makes his original Breaking Bad reference that much stronger, as both Walter White and Wilbur Soot turned to drugs to support their significant others while they were with child. In any case, Dream needed some way to up the ante and to raise the stakes of the narrative, so he decided to go to war. People liked that too, but after the dust had settled and the battle for L'Manberg was finally over, people also started to realize that maybe it was Wilbur who was in the wrong. And it was here, at this point in our story, that Wilbur finally learned his most valuable lesson as a writer, a lesson that would define the rest of the Dream SMP and come to guide the arc he wrote for his character. Because it is at this point in the story that Wilbur realized what people truly wanted when it came to fan service. The Dream SMP's definition of fan service started innocently enough. It was just Hamilton LARPing, a group of content creators paying an innocent homage to something that everyone already liked. It was benign, it was harmless, there was a truce, L'Manberg was saved, and everyone was happy. But nowadays, people don't want happy. They want hurt, they want pain, because suffering is universally human, and it makes the stories we consume that much more engaging and easier to engage with. If the Dream SMP never had a happy ending, then people would be forced to write it for themselves, to draw that happy ending that their favorite characters would never, ever even come close to receiving in reality. They would be forced to take part in the narrative actively, the fandom, to follow the story even more closely, hoping, praying, waiting on a miracle that would never come, a sun that would never rise, only to sink lower in the horizon with each passing day, a world eternally in twilight. It was here that Wilbur discovered angst, and like Prometheus bringing fire to man, the Dream SMP would never be the same again. One of his greatest strengths as a writer was being able to create remarkably consistent characters, and after his introduction of angst to the narrative of the Dream SMP, Wilbur finally revealed to the audience what the central tenet of his character would be for the rest of his run on the server, the core motivation from which everything else about Wilbur Soot the character stemmed. If he can't have it, no one can. I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, the Dream SMP started to rely more heavily on a set script after the conclusion of the L'Manberg War. Quackity's betrayal in the election arc kickstarted the beginning of the end, signaling the start of Wilbur Soot's fall from grace. Because once again, his character was in the wrong, trying to fraudulently rig an election to remain in power indefinitely. But this was his city, his home, the home he had built for his wife, now gone, and his son, now estranged. He was the only one left, and if he couldn't have it, no one could, so he and Tommy tried to rig the results of the election. They failed, though, and Schlatt rose to power instead. Wilbur and Tommy were exiled into the woods to found Pogtopia, and the cracks in Will's facade began to show almost immediately. L'Manberg was his home, and now his home was no more. If he can't have it, no one can. Schlatt, despite being only a man, is almost akin to an ancient entity, a being that hails from a land in which death was not only common, but a minor inconvenience, something to be laughed at. And the only way to stop someone who laughs in the face of death is with the face of death itself. To win their war against the new Manberg, Wilbur called on the aid of an old friend of his father's, a mighty warrior known far and wide for the incredible acts of violence he and he alone was seemingly capable of performing single-handedly. His hooves stained red with blood, and his head heavy from the gilded crown impressed upon it, Technoblade joined the Dream SMP. He massacred friend and foe alike on the day of the Red Festival, and the sight of such bloodshed awakened something within Wilbur. Anarchy was the only way forward for his character now. He was in the wrong, that much he knew. He had abandoned his son, his child, he had lost his wife, and even his surrogate brother-in-arms was turning on him out of fear of instability. But L'Manberg was his, and if he couldn't have it, no one could. Wilbur detonated the bombs beneath his little nation, blowing it to Kingdom Come on November the 16th, 2020, only to be struck down like a rabid dog by his father, who had traveled far and wide across the realms, only to find that his son had become a man he no longer recognized. When the dust settled, all that remained of Wilbur Soot was a fragment of his spirit, riddled with amnesia and born again with the innocence of a child. Ghostbur was cute. He had a blue sheep that he named Friend, and people liked him. In fact, even in the narrative of the Dream SMP, everyone who knew the character of Wilbur Soot in life came to love the tiny gray phantom more than they ever loved the man himself. But if there's one thing you should have learned by now, it's that with Wilbur, there is no happy ending. Everyone loved Ghostbur more than they loved his living counterpart, even the audience. And if Wilbur Soot, the character, couldn't have that love, no one could. So when he was unceremoniously resurrected, brought back from beyond the grave, he didn't seek atonement for his sins, or remember his time as Ghostbur and become overwhelmed with regret. No, far from it. Rather, Wilbur, once again alive, sentenced Ghostbur to the same purgatory he had been rotting in before his resurrection, damned for eternity, never to return. Because if he couldn't have that love, the love everyone felt for Ghostbur, then no one could. That was all there was to it. And yet, even after his resurrection, even after all that, the question still remains. Did he know? Did Wilbur see my video and change his mind about leaving, just to deprive me of the satisfaction of being right? No. Of course not. That would be literally insane. But I have to admit, I'm jealous of him. I'm jealous of his skill as a writer and the success he's been able to achieve with it. And most of all, I'm jealous of the life he was able to give to his most successful character, his most successful creation. On the Dream SMP, Wilbur Soot had a wife who loved him. He had a son who looked up to him, idolized him in every way. He had a father who would have shook the heavens and earth on his behalf, and he had two brothers that, while not bound by blood, were with him through thick and thin. And he threw all of it away, because if he couldn't have everything he ever wanted, if he couldn't have the world, then no one could. I have to admit, I'm envious of him. I envy him. So I guess envy is my sin. Inside the box is nothing, because nothing is the sum total of Wilbur Soot's time on the Dream SMP. And inside that box, inside that nothing, is nothing but pain, an emptiness that only grows. Wilbur lost his wife, his son, his brothers in Tommy and Techno. He lost his father, and his friends, and his home in L'Manberg. He lost his innocence in Ghostbur, and with him he lost the capacity to love or ever be loved again. He lost everything, and it was his own selfishness that led him to ruin, because if he couldn't have it, if he couldn't have everything, no one could. Wilbur's character arc on the Dream SMP is both concise and consistent, and it is a thing of beauty, a storyline spanning over the years that shows just how smart Wilbur Soot the content creator really is. Because so long as Wilbur the writer deprived his alter ego of a happy ending, then there will always be someone who wants to write that happy ending for him, and there will always be someone tuning in to see the Dream SMP. It's genius. It really is. Through sheer force of will alone, Wilbur was responsible for a juggernaut of internet content creation that has now grown and mutated entirely out of control. Even today, long after his term as head writer came to a close, you can still see these same core tenets of angst above all else present in the overarching narrative of the Dream SMP. Wilbur's writing and the character arc he constructed for himself is nothing short of brilliant, and now that I'm back and making videos on YouTube again, I thought it'd be fitting to go back to where it all started for me, with a sequel to the video that started this channel. I just wanted to share my appreciation for the genius of Wilbur Soot and his writing on the Dream SMP one last time. I'm done making Minecraft videos. I don't think I'm done making Minecraft videos forever, and I'm definitely not done making videos, period. But as of right now, I've only got one more left in the tank. One last shot in the dark. So tune back in on Monday, March 14th, 2022, at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time for the final Frostbyte Freeman Minecraft video. Because after that, I'm finished. I'm Frostbyte Freeman. And until next time, stay frosty.